We got a phone call coming in. Let's just go there, pick up the line, and see if that's it. Hello. Uh,
Hello, Redneck. It's Terry.
Hey, Mr. Terry Jennings, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the Gumbo YaYa radio show, man. It's good to talk to you.
Good talking to you, and thanks for having me on, man.
Well, I appreciate it. There's a little bit of
How
delay.
are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. So there's for y'all that are listening, there's a little bit of delay. So y'all just bear with us. Um, so we're chatting with Mr. Terry Jennings out of Texas, and he has written a book about his father Waylon, my outlaw dad, and that book is out, and it's been out for what, almost a year now, Mr. Jennings.
Just about a year, yes.
And
Maybe a little over. It came out last.
All right. And yeah, I was excited. I just got into it. What I like about the book is it goes into so many different things. What I want you to do is, if you would please, tell people about the book, what inspired you to write it finally after, all these years. And then I'd like to comment on a few things about it that I really enjoyed.
I can tell you that I started writing the thing about 10 years ago, and I tried every which way. It was like putting a square peg in a round hole, and finally I just said, God, if you want me to have a book published, it's in your hands. And I would say within about 4 months, I had a great co-writer in David Thomas. I had a great agent, and then I had Hachette Books come and put it out to the world, so I was just really, really happy about that. And what I did is I started from the beginning and tried to put a human face to Dad because there were so many myths out there. And it was just a joy to write, and I thank God every day for it being out there.
Well, I'm glad you did, because there's so many books and there's so many, I guess, biographies out there, so many things that are written about Waylon, and it's good to have this insight. I know he did a memoir. My couple of questions for you: is it true that he kind of didn't like the tag, the label outlaw country?
Well, I'll tell you, Hazel Smith, and she was the office manager at Hillbilly Central, Tom Paul Glazer's place. She's the first one to call them a bunch of outlaws, and he really loved her, and he embraced it then. And then after a while, it really got old, especially after he got busted. So, yeah, he got kind of tired of that. And plus, it took on a different meaning, because it should have been called the survival movement, because that's all them guys were doing, was trying to survive doing their own music. It wasn't nothing about robbing banks and trains and, running around cussing and stuff. It's just trying to make a living.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of cap it. I went through, I'm reading through there, and there's a few things it touches on. It touches on the family side of Waylon, and it touches on, the artist side. And in the book, ladies and gentlemen, if you read this book, I mean, he talks about his relationship with his father as a father and as, I guess, an icon. One of the things that I liked about it was you talk about, when you were like 3-4 years old, you were the human TV remote. We can all relate to that, you were like the TV remote, and then going into the school, and somebody said, well, what does your daddy do? And you didn't think your dad was any different than other kids that were doctors and dentists and whatever. And you said, well, my dad is a singing star. And the kids that were laughing, and the teacher whips out an album and said, no, here he is. And it turns out your teacher was a fan. Like, that's great stuff. I mean, for you, your dad was kind of two people. Did you feel like there were two roles for you in that relationship as well?
Well, I can tell you that we had to wear a lot of hats. We had our father-son hat, we had our boss-employee hat, and we had our, brother's hat. And we knew which hat to wear at which time to keep from pissing each other off. So, it was a great life. Like I say, from Jimmy Buffett, there was some of it magic and some of it tragic, but it was a good life all the way.
And I think 13 years, you were his road manager and his confidant on the road, right?
About that long, yeah. I started in 72 and went till about 85, 86.
Okay.
It
And
was one wild ride, I can tell you that.
it's been 15 years now since he passed.
He passed in 2002, so yeah, about
Yeah.
15, yeah.
Yeah. So now you're the eldest son. All right, and I know that.
That's right.
So can we? So for people who are curious out there, can you kind of give us the family tree?
There's a whole bunch of it.
I
Like
know.
Grandma
I think
used to
there's
say, there's a lot of
there's a
got
Texas
a lot of
law,
different
right?
ways. You're bound to like one of them.
Texas law. There's got to be a
No,
Jennings
but
in every county.
my first wife, my mother, Maxine, he had me, Julie, Buddy, and Dina. And then his second marriage, they adopted Tommy Lynn. Third marriage didn't last but about a year if it lasted that long, and they never had kids. And then when he married Jessie, she had a daughter, Jennifer, and then in 79 came along Shooter. So there's 7 of us in all, and we're all brothers and sisters through thick and thin.
Yeah, and that's the one thing about I like to consider myself a good friend of you, if you don't mind me saying that. And with Buddy and I tell you, chatting with y'all, it's down there. Like, and I just said, like, the Jennings clan is there's one in every county by law, right? In Texas, they quite a population,
especially in the state of Texas.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's what I'm excited about. And forgive me, I love the book. I'm really getting into it, and I'm not a reader, and it's one of those things that makes me want to read. Which is, and folks, I'm telling y'all out of sincerity, I don't like reading, but this book makes you want to keep reading. So you got to get it, and let's tell people where they can get it. All right. So what would you think is the best way, Mr. Jennings?
They can get it anywhere online or at any bookstore. There's Amazon, Goodreads. I have a website, www.waylandson.com, and you can go there, and there's links to buy books at different places online, but they also have them in the bookstores.
Yeah, so you can get an ebook, or you can get a hard copy. And I know I saw Walmart and Target had them.
Audio also.
Oh, there's an audio book as well?
Excuse me?
You said there's.
Yes.
All right, so that's perfect for me. And who does the reading?
I don't have that name offhand, but he did a really good job.
All right, yeah. So it's we're talking to Mr. Terry Jennings, and the name of the book is Waylon, My Outlaw Dad, and it is a autobiography, I guess if you want to call it, of his life and times that on the road. It talks about family and business and everything. One of the things that I took away from the initial reading there is that it wasn't a conventional family. It wasn't a conventional life. People who read this, I mean, you talk about affairs in there. You talk about drug use and things like that. And so there is an edge to the book as well. What kind of response have you gotten, in that regard from, say, your peers, people in the industry that, are thinking like maybe you should or shouldn't have shared some of this?
I have got nothing but positive from everybody because, it's all true. You can't argue with any of it. And, it may sound crazy. It does sound crazy looking back now, but at the time it seemed quite normal, but.
Yeah, I guess, when you as you go through and you read it, you don't necessarily relate to it, but the book, and again, I'm just getting into it, but when I read it, it does kind of, you do sense a normalcy in it. It's like, it's rock and roll lifestyle, and for all intents and purposes, your father, Waylon was rock and roll before rock and roll was really rock and roll, that whole, I mean, he toured with, they would ride buses and planes with Elvis and Big Bopper and Johnny Horton, all them guys, right? Johnny Cash, and when everybody was just cutting into the business, is that right?
Yeah, it was mostly Buddy Holly's where he got his start. And if Buddy would have had his way, he would have turned him rock and roll, but Dad was country to the bone. But all that bled over into his music with a little bit of rock flavor to it, so it all came out quite well. I mean, he's got a great catalog to choose from, and I'm amazed that he's got about a song for every occasion. It's like, if you're feeling like this, put that on. You know, that'll help you.
Yeah,
if it's raining outside, put on radio.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I was just thinking that, like primarily what we would like to do here is give, you know, new independent artists recognition, you know, and so there are very few mainstream, you know, artists that we play, but I guarantee we're going to start every, you know, we will play Waylon Jennings on this show. There's, you know, you do the Waylon Wednesdays on your Facebook page, and I know that Let There Be Country, which is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as you know, when we chat back and forth, they're always playing Waylon. So we'll definitely, you know, it's you can't do a country show without playing Waylon.
Well, I tell you what, you keep supporting those independent artists as well, because you know they need all the help they can get, because conventional radio isn't picking them up.
No, they're not. Now, is Corbin Music? Did you kind of put? Are you still doing the Corbin Music, or did you put that on side with the book and everything?
I'm still doing it, just not looking for anything new to add to it at this moment.
Okay.
But once the book, you know, slows it down a little bit, and I get a little more free time, I'll be looking for artists and more songs and things.
Well, you know what I'm going to do is when I get done reading my copy, I'm going to send it to you so that you can put your scribble on it. And I put an autographed copy right there in my bookshelf so I can hang on to that right next to my my Wade Jennings CD that I'm waiting to get.
That'll work. Yeah, Wade's going to have his out pretty soon.
Yeah, you mind? You want to talk about Wade? You want to talk about Wade a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So, Wade Jennings is your son.
He's my oldest son. I'm quite proud of him. He's out there beating the road, paying his dues, and doing quite well. And
his sound is, you know, is unique unto its own. I mean, he does, you know, do some. He does play Waylon. He play honors and tributes to his grandfather. He plays, but he has a great sound that's really like. I guess you got to call it an independent Jennings sound. That's what it is. And but he's out there. He's touring with what Lord knows everybody, right? Billy Don Burns and folks like that. I mean, like he's all over. Is he ever home anymore?
Well, he's calling Kansas home now, so I guess he's home quite a bit. But he don't make it to Texas too often, I can tell you that. He was here about a week or so ago and did a free show at Gas Monkey. But that's the first time he's been in a while. He's been quite busy running back and forth from coast to coast. And, yeah, he does his own shows. He opens with other people. Other people open for him. And like I said, he's just out there paying his dues. That's what you got to do.
You know, and that's the thing about the industry. It doesn't matter, you know what name you come on, like, and we talked about this before. If you're good, you know, you're good. You know, people know it. Doesn't matter, you know, who you are, where you come from, your background. It's the music that makes it. And I know that, you know, Way is playing a ton of shows because he's popular and in demand. And the thing that I think is he's not commercial. He's not mainstream. I mean, if you're looking for, you know, that candy pop country thing, don't listen to Way, because you're gonna get a full dose of Jennings, just like his grandfather. You know, he's playing stuff that, you know, speaks to, you know, where he came from. You know, and you touch on that in the book too, like how your father wrote. You were talking about, I think it's in the introduction, how he fought the Nashville sound or the mainstream Nashville, how back in the day, correct me if I'm wrong, they would tell the artists what to record, you know, what they wanted to hear on the album, how they wanted to arrange and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, what they had is they had what they called Nashville sound. And you could take the Nashville sound and plug just about any artist into it and get a pretty good hit record out of it. Well, the thing was, they kept trying to plug that into it, and it didn't produce anything. So he finally got frustrated and took over his own production, and that's when things started really taking off for him, because he quit the Nashville sound and started doing the Waylon sound, and that's what people have been looking for anyway, because that's what he was playing on the road. He didn't have a bunch of strings and all that on the road with him like they were on the record. And he really liked to be able to do on stage what you hear on a record. You know, so when he was producing his own stuff, Honky Tonk Heroes, that was like 3 or 4 instruments. You know, pretty raw, but great stuff. And really easy to reproduce on stage.
And he had so many great, like you mentioned, Rainy Day Woman. I love that song. You know, Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. Lukenbach, which is one of the all-time classics. Like, for me, Wordless Surprise is just like probably one of the best country songs ever written. Or Waltz Me to Heaven. You know, I mean, there's just, I mean, it's an endless list of things. And Cedartown, Georgia, I think, for me, is that. I think that is a great song, Cedartown. Is there, you know, like, argue with me about any of them. I dare you.
No, you ain't hit one I didn't like yet. My favorite is Jack of Diamonds from the Are You Ready for the Country album. That was all produced by Ken Mansfield, who wrote the foreword for my book. I was quite blessed to have him write the foreword.
I'm losing you a little bit here. All right, I lost you on that part. Hang on, we got hang on one second. Hang on 1 second. I got some I don't know, some lawn cutters, some leaf blowers or something happening there in the background. So let's just give them one. Hey man, it's live radio. That's what we're about. You know, and that's what it's about. This is a problem I have talking to you, Brother Terry, is that every time we talk, we'll talk, you know, when we talk, we'll end up talking about 100 different things, man. It's just so easy to chat with, and you never want to do interviews. You're just like your father.
Well, I've always been kind of shy about things like that.
Yeah, I'm losing.
Step out of the shadows, but I'm used to it.
Right. Well, I'm glad. You know, we just have a phone chat, and man, if they pick a good time to cut the grass, it'd be right when I'm talking to you, wouldn't it? So, yeah. Now, as you know, I'm gonna see if I can drown out that leaf blower. I'm a big Jessie Coulter fan, and I open every show with Miss Jessie until the day I actually get to chat with her on the air. Then I'll stop harassing her. But I like that song "Storms Never Last" that they do together.
Okay.
You know, and that's kind of
a great song.
Isn't it? It says a lot, doesn't it?
She wrote that. Yeah, it does. I tell you what, I can't think of too many people who hadn't covered that song. Hank Jr. did it. Dad did it. They did it as a duet. Jesse did it. A bunch of other people did it. It's just a great. That's what they call a stand. Right there. It'll stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And Jesse's a great woman. I love her to death.
Yeah, I just, you know what? It's Waylon's music, Jesse's music, Miss Jessie, were like such an integrated fabric. They were just a part of your being when I was growing up. The music, you know, what it spoke to at the time. That whole transition there, like in the 70s, you know, whenever, you know, people were coming from. I don't. Yeah, it's hard to say. You know, we had Glenn Campbell, John Denver, Waylon Jennings, all those. It was just. I think it was a really pure time in country music. Before you got, you know, before the '80s hit, and you started getting into those super groups, you know, like Alabama and Oak Ridge Boys and all that kind of stuff. You know, when the Oak Ridge Boys kind of transitioned from being that good old gospel group to that mainstream country. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I tell you, you know. It was a really great time back in the 70s and early 80s. And I can tell you right now, there's still people out there doing it today. You mentioned Way. There's my brother Shooter. There's Jamie Johnson. There's Sturgill Simpson. There's Cody Jinks. The list, you know, there are people still out there doing it.
Yeah, and that's who we're playing. Like, we play Way. If you give me a nice, good studio cut, we'll play it all the time. So we do Cody Jinks, Moondog Hall, and Billy Don Burns. I mean, you know, I ain't got to list them. You know who we're talking about. J.W. Lane and all those folks. So absolutely, and that's what we're trying to do here. Because, I mean, when you listen to it, you're hearing their tribute, their homage to your father. I mean, I can't help but repeat myself. If you're listening to a classic sounding country artist, they're all patterning themselves after Waylon. I mean, I don't. It's you said it in your book. He is the greatest of country artists out there. I know you said you're a little bit biased when you said that, but uh, you can't help but be. And it ain't what's it? It ain't bragging if you done it, and Waylon done it.
Well, he pretty much did, and I will stick with that. To me, he was the greatest country singer, writer, guitar player. I mean, he could take a song. Half these songs he sang, people think he wrote, and he didn't. He just made them his own. And that's what these young guys are doing themselves. They may have started out pattern off Dad, but they found their own voices and just took it to a different level.
Yeah, and again, I think paving the way or being the foundation is a good way of putting it. And one of the things that I found interesting is I know that he didn't like interviews, but he was a conversationalist. Like if you ever saw him, like there was I've seen a few where he sat and he was chatting, like the conversation he had, and I think I'm thinking it was Ralph Emery, but he was talking about Waymore's blues. And he just casual, laid back him, and I think Jesse was with him at the time. And he, like, if you just got him, it seemed like you get him into a conversation, and it just kind of was flowing. You hung on every word. But in your book, you say, he wasn't crazy about, the DJ and the interview and that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, he wasn't real crazy. He didn't like giving interviews out on the road and waking up the next day to find out they wrote something he had never said. And as far as the DJs, he wasn't real fond of people being really drunk, and they had a tendency to party quite a bit because I was partying with them right there. And so that kind of nixed that. But you mentioned Ralph Emery. They went way back, and he was always comfortable talking with Ralph. So those are some good interviews.
A lot of people say, and you hear it all the time, that, man, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall, or I'd like to have been on that tour bus and that. Let's just go ahead and do some name dropping. Let's talk about the people that you had the pleasure of crossing paths with, the big, the names. And I know that for a fact that they were, when they were actually fans of your father's, what is that like to have this person that, like this icon in movies and music come up and who is like a fan of your dad's? That's got to be a unique feeling all its own.
It really is, and the list goes on. It starts with Cash. That was pretty much, I guess, the first one I met, and then of course Jesse, Willie, Hank Jr., George Jones. I mean, the list goes on and on. But my favorite was we were in an airport, and they come over and said that Eric Clapton was in the airport and wanted to come over and say hello. And Dad said, sure, tell him to come over and say hello. He shows up, and he shook Dad's hand and said, man, I just want to tell you, you're the greatest guitar player I've ever heard in my life. And I went, wait a minute. You don't get to say that. You're Eric Clapton. You're the greatest guitar player in the world. So that's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's I know it's a life that a lot of people are envious of, and or it's, you look at it and you glamorize and you think about that, but I respect you so much for putting into that book the things that you are like, hey, look, folks, as great as it was, there are these pitfalls and there's these realities that come with fame, as far as like the recreational drugs and the recreational women and things like that. Looking back on that, is there something that you think you would have liked to seen or done different? Or a lot of people say no regrets, so let's just kind of chat about that a little bit. What do you think?
I'm the same way, no regrets. Everything I've done in the past is what made me what I am today, especially after accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior. That'll change you for the best every time. And, everybody looks at it and says it's a lot of fun, but, you got to realize, once you get in the middle of it, some of it ain't fun. But, this was back in the 70s. I don't want to glorify all those things. because you got to realize doctors, lawyers, athletes, they are all and you know, and so, and today they've got structured tours where they go out for like 30 or 45 days with all this time in between and all this. We were out there doing 200 plus shows a year. It was just go, 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 go. And when we weren't on the road, we were in the studio getting ready to go back out on the road. So it was just a nonstop thing. So, I mean, it's a whole different animal now, thank God. But, you know, that's just the way it was back then.
Yeah, you know, you talk about road warriors now, and there's all kinds of songs. I mean, they're still making songs today about life on the road and being on the bus. You know, Billy Don Burns. I mention him a lot because you know he's you know the kind of guy that is kind of, I guess, a torchbearer for folks like your father and Hank. You know, he's old school. He writes about life. He has that "Wouldn't Have It Any Other Way." That song about just, you know, being on the road and playing. You know, they wouldn't have it any other way. Hotel is a you know, a coach. You know, so I don't think
well,
now.
I'll tell you,
Yeah,
he's a great songwriter. I've known him since the 70s. And he's a good old boy, and he just writes from the heart, is what he does.
Yeah, I admire that. I admire him, and he's the one that, again, he, you know, he talks about his demons, and he basically wears his life on his sleeve. You know, he doesn't pretend to be what he ain't. You know, and then you know, like every time, and you mentioned, like, you know, accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior, and you know, we always end up, you and I, when we chat, end up talking, you know, I'll pray for you, love you, pray for this and pray for that. And, you know, I grew up very strong in my faith. But I'd imagine, like, what Sundays must have been like in gospel. Because I know when I was a kid, man, gospel music was always around the house. We always had gospel music playing. We had a bonfire. We'd start off with Amazing Grace, and we'd end up with Jambalaya at the end of the night, you know. So, I mean, you got to tell me how much of that was going on. How much of the gospel music was, or was it just, you know, pretty much country and rock and roll?
Well, Grandma, you know, she was always had some good gospel going on and mixed in with the country. And, of course, Jessie, she not only sings it, she writes it, and it's great. So she kept it around the house as much as possible. It's always been around since I was born. You know, it's just a fabric of life as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, man, I would love to be at one of them jam sessions. And Miss Jessie, she just released a gospel album, correct?
Yeah, it's all Psalms, and it's really, really good. I suggest it for everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go out and steal that. But let's do this, man. Let's one more time tell folks the title of the book, where they can find it, and if there's anything else. I know you have a time limit, and I appreciate you checking in with us. Any tidbits in the book you want to share?
Well, I appreciate you having me, and the name of the book is Waylon, Tales of My Outlaw Dad. It's online everywhere. It's in bookstores. It's in airports. They put the thing everywhere. You can pick it up anywhere. Or you can go to my website, www.waylonson.com.
All right, so,
and thanks for having me on, Red. I appreciate it.
Man, listen, I appreciate it. And so we're going to play 3 in a row. I'm gonna play my 3 favorite songs that we talked about here: Lukenbach, Cedar Town, and Storms Never Last. And I'm gonna see if I can't put you on the spot for a second. Will you just tell people who you are and that they're listening to the Gumbo YaYa radio show?
Yeah, this is Terry Jennings, author of Waylon, Tales of My Outlaw Dad, and you're listening to the YaYa Gumbo radio show.
All right, much obliged, Brother Terry. Listen, I love you, man. I'm gonna, give me a call, keep in touch, and we're gonna send these out to you and your outlaw dad. So we got some Waylon Jennings coming out for you folks. All right, thank you, Terry. I'm gonna let you go, man. Love you.
I love you too, man. Have a blessed day.
All right, bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Terry Jennings, author of Waylon, My Outlaw Dad, right here on the Gumbo YaYa radio show. And he has so you can go get that book. anywhere online and shop for it, look for it, Google it, Oogle it, whatever you can. It's a fantastic read. And when you're reading this, y'all need to understand. He talks about life on the road with a legend, a music icon legend. He talks about his childhood. He talks about drug use. So it's a great book. It's informative. It evokes a lot of emotion, and it gives you really a good in-depth look at somebody who been a lot of rumors about, and this is the inside truth. So having said that, here's